Hey guys, Raisins here, back with another video, and today we are going to talk about trading. Twitter voted on it, and I'm going to make the video. So we're going to talk today about what makes a good trade, what things you can do to create opportunities and identify when you can go for a trade, and how you can abuse trades to win harder than you've ever won before. Understanding how to trade usually comes after you learn your matchup a bit better, but a lot of learning matchups is simply trial and error. Therefore, you shouldn't be afraid to learn by doing. I would really recommend play the matchup aggressively, and you'll often realize just how many opportunities present themselves in solo queue. But before we start, let's define what a trade is. Trading, in my book, is when you use your abilities or attacks on the enemy in a specific way to not kill them, but simply to exchange your health or mana. So trading is basically a short version of all-in, where both sides have a way of non-committal engage, and can also usually back out of a trade halfway through. So with that out the way, let's talk about the basics of trading first. So I mentioned matchup knowledge, and if you want to trade, even at a basic level, you need to understand some things about your matchup. So matchup knowledge is the main factor in spotting whether or not you can actually win a trade and how certain trades should, in theory, play out. So I can go over some examples later in the video of how I would think about how to trade using my matchup knowledge, but you'll also need a few more pieces of info before you can pull the trigger on a trade. This sounds silly, but first of all, always check the items before you trade and compare your items to the enemy's items. It sounds a bit easy and obvious, but I see this a lot when I'm coaching. Players just pulling the trigger without even checking the scoreboard. They basically don't double check whether or not they are even theoretically supposed to win the trade, if that makes sense. I've done some pretty stupid trades myself. I've gone in when the enemy support has stopwatch off of cooldown, and I didn't check items. I get punished really hard. That's a really common example of when checking items in a trade is really important and basically just wins you the play or prevents you from making a game-losing play. A more straightforward example would be the enemy AD carry has a Noon Quiver and your AD carry has boots and a longsword. It's pretty scary to trade, even in hard winning matchups when you have such an item disadvantage. So you just have to think about the items basically before you pop the trigger on the trade. So the next idea I want to introduce is to trade with a purpose. Generally, you don't just want to autopilot your trades, as you get a lot more out of them if you ask yourself a couple of important questions first. Some examples can be, can I get something after I win this trade? Some decent examples of getting something would be, maybe you get a tower plate. That's a really nice boost to your gold. Maybe you can clear an enemy pink ward in lane, and that means they can't tell if your jungler's ganking. Maybe you can stop the enemy from TPing while your team does Drake if you're a top laner and you win a trade. Those are all really good things that you can build off of out of a trade. The trading with a reason means you won't take these flippy 50-50 trades for no reason. And in the event that something goes wrong, at least you can learn from it. I traded because I thought I needed to stop enemy top from TPing. But in the end, I lost the trade, so I can't actually stop him from TPing. So what is the thing you learned? Well, you should probably just tell your team to be careful of enemy TP instead of throwing your lane. It's much harder to fix the impulsive decisions if you trade just pure off of your impulse rather than the decisions you actively make a choice about. Last but definitely not least is using distractions as a way to gain an advantage in trades. I cannot stress how useful this tip is. In fact, I would say if you only take one thing away from this entire video, take this one away. Just like you, your opponent has a pretty limited amount of attention in the lane, and you can use this to your advantage. The most common example, and I'm sure everybody has heard this, is trade when the enemy is CSing. So the enemy AD carry obviously wants to hit minions because all AD carries are obsessed with minions. So a common thing you'll see me do on stream is I will keep my eyes on the minions more than on the enemy AD carry. And I've got a couple of examples coming up. I'll show you me doing exactly that. And you can find big windows to trade when people are distracted. A couple more advanced examples. Let's take it a bit further. The enemy has to face check, for example. If they don't have vision in a bush, you can initiate a trade off of a face check, and you just simply have a reflex advantage, and the enemy team has to react to you popping out of a bush and blowing cooldowns on them. That is not an easy thing for a lot of people to react to, and sometimes they will just mis-execute or not have time to trade back effectively. Another example would be when they're looking at the minimap. For example, an Ashe, she E's the dragon, and my jungler is doing dragon. I probably know that she's keeping an eye on Drake and she's maybe pinged it or is aware that Drake is happening. I could maybe take that opportunity while the E is just about to tag my jungler to go in and trade on them. This also has the added benefit of basically just forcing them to make a lot of decisions at once. So if you know you can win that trade or at least go even, what you're doing is kind of pulling pressure off of your jungler a little bit. That's something you can always do. Like I said, everybody has limited attention span. Another one would be your jungler could potentially be sitting in a bush near your lane. You could look for a trade aggressively when you know that the enemy team knows the jungler is nearby, and it forces them to make some tough decisions. Are they going to blow cooldowns on you and risk getting ganked? Or do they have to save cooldowns to maybe avoid a jungle gank? All these kind of things you can put together and form this really insane level of detail when you trade. But for now, just start with the basics, and then as you get more comfortable, just keep adding layers and layers on top of it. So if you use these 3 ideas, you'll already have a much better understanding of how and why you trade. So I'm just going to summarize the 3 points before I talk about a couple of other points. One is build your matchup knowledge and try things in lane. So those are kind of go hand in hand. You will build your matchup knowledge simply by trying. While you're doing this, pay attention to the enemy items and use this to figure out whether a trade went good or bad. That's kind of the trial and error process. And then you can update your ideas on the matchup and go into the next game with a better understanding of what trading in that matchup looks like. And then secondly, trade with a purpose. So try and trade for something. Maybe it is just to kill the enemy team under tower after your trade finishes and your jungler comes. Maybe it's to get a dragon. Maybe it's to deny enemy TP. But have a reason to trade. Don't just trade because, oh, it's a trading opportunity, because that tends to lead into bad habits of you just autopilot trading all the time. In fact, those kind of players are very easy to gank if you're just constantly trading every time you see an opportunity. Thirdly, like I said, if you take one thing from this video, it is use distractions as an advantage. You guys will see a massive difference if you start trading when the opponents are busy doing something else, when their attention is elsewhere. You'll basically just auto-win some trades in lane without even breaking a sweat. With that out of the way, I made what I'm going to call the holy checklist of trading. It is still a work in progress name-wise, but we're going to stick with that for now. So here it is. The holy checklist of trading. Number 1, do you actually win the trade if both sides land everything? Again, I know this sounds silly, but you have to double check this. Play through the trade in your head and see whether or not you can actually disengage after you've won the trade. For example, if I can't run away even after I've won a trade, it turns into an all-in, and if I've blown all my cooldowns, do I actually win? The second thing, is there a way to guarantee that you land everything while they don't? Now, this one is kind of a more advanced tip that you can start learning a lot about. But basically, can you find a way for the opponents to miss something or make it very awkward for them to land something while you can guarantee your spells? So a really solid example would be Kai'Sa. She needs to land her W in a lot of lanes to win trades. So if you are trading with minion waves in front of a Kai'Sa, a lot of the time it's very hard for her to land W on you when you're disengaging the trade. So you need to keep that in mind and use that to your advantage as best as you can. Thirdly, can your team follow up if something goes wrong? Now, this is kind of the high risk, high reward part of the conversation. So if you go for a trade and you have literally nobody on your side of the map and no TPs ready to help you, you're on your own. You better make sure you can win that trade. You also better make sure that you have thought about what happens if it goes wrong. So these are some things that you can just think about. What happens if enemy jungler ganks? Can my jungler help me if I trade and the trade doesn't go my way, etc., etc.? Who's on what side of the map is very important. And this rolls directly into the fourth point. Double check TPs and junglers before you commit to a long trade. Now, short trades, you can probably get away with small things, but the higher elo you go, the more top laners and mid laners with TPs are looking at your lane, and vice versa. You know, if you're trading in top lane, mid laners will be looking, and they're not just gonna slide by and let you take a long trade in the middle of the lane if they have TP and they can win that fight. So double check that you can't get ganked by the jungler or randomly 5-man partied bot lane out of nowhere. It's very important. And I'm gonna basically stick an extra point on because this one is so important. I always get this one wrong. Sometimes, you know, I'm autopilot trading and I get TP'd on. Can they TP? That is a separate point on its own. I know I just said that, but repeat it just for people in the back. Make sure you can't get randomly TP'd on, because this is such an easy way for top and mids to impact the game. And it's also quite simple to avoid if you are a bot laner, if you simply sweep a bush before you trade. So double check TPs. Very, very valuable point that will save you a lot of gray screen time. And then another point is, if you win or lose the trade, can you actually get something out of the trade? I wrote how high risk, high reward is the play. I know I already mentioned the high risk, high reward, but this point is basically summed up as, if you win the trade, what do you gain? And if you lose the trade, what do you lose? So if you are trading in front of the enemy tower, chances are that if you lose the trade, you aren't going to lose a bunch of tower plates because they have to spend the time to push to your tower. But what about if you lose a trade in front of your tower and the enemy jungler is on your side of the map? Yeah, that's a problem. So you have to think about these kind of things. And again, it sounds kind of basic, but if you make it routine and habit, you will fall into these traps a little less, and you will gain more from the good trades and lose less from the bad trades. And the final point is to check summoners. Basically just, do they have a summoner disadvantage and how can I exploit that? And I want to tie that into the first point, which is, do we win if we land everything? There are ways to guarantee that you land things, and summoners are one of the best ways to guarantee you land spells. If you are initiating a trade and enemy team has exhaust and heal and you don't have ignite, chances are, I can tell you right now, you don't have the summoner advantage to even think about the trade. Go do something else with your time, or play safe and wait until you do have ignite to counter their heal. So summoners, very important when you trade, but I'm sure all of you know that. You're all smart individuals, so I just thought I'd throw that one in there. It's always a helpful point to double check flashes and sums and TPs, etc, etc. So let's take a look at some examples from my solo queue. I'll try and incorporate the things I mentioned and show you how I use this kind of checklist idea, show you what makes a good trade, and also where I abuse some of the earlier points that I mentioned to guarantee that the opponents have no counterplay or much less counterplay in a trade. So in this first example, I am in a Rell versus Alistar matchup, and I'm playing Alistar. Now, this is not a good matchup for me, and in fact, this is one of those matchups where I basically should never be able to trade if Rell is paying attention. The reason is, if I use my W, if I combo onto her, then she stuns me mid-W with her E, her little snap metal thingy that she attaches to an ally. So theoretically, I should never be able to combo. Now, does this mean that I never look for combos? And does this mean that I basically just give up on comboing? No, what I end up doing in this example, as I'll play it through, is start fishing for combos. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to trade, but it doesn't mean that I give up all pressure in lane simply because I can't trade either. I'm testing the waters and basically seeing what Rell is actually capable of and trying to find windows where she's distracted. So this example is basically, when is Rell distracted enough that I can actually pull off a combo? And another point to note about this matchup is, with Aftershock, I would not be able to do this. The reason being, after I combo, I wouldn't be able to run away, because I would just get CC'd by Senna, then Rell, and chain CC'd and die, and my Aftershock would be useless. But with Phase Rush, if I land a clean combo into an auto attack, for example, then I can actually proc Phase Rush and get the hell out. So you'll see in this situation, even in the stream, I say I can't combo, and then literally a second later, I combo. And the reason I combo here, and I'll play it through a couple times, is simply because I was in range and Senna walked up so much into my face that she basically, I was basically calling Rell's bluff and saying, you're not going to react to this in time. Now, this isn't a reliable strategy to trade, but it is a way you can play a bad matchup if they give you an opportunity to pressure, you know, aggressively, even in a bad matchup, sometimes you will get away with these things, and Rel needed to react very quickly to my trade. As you can see, I'm kind of threatening by walking back and forth, and Rel has to be ready for an E, and Senna walks so close into me that I managed to get a clean E off. And this basically just wins the lane from this point onwards. I'm allowed to walk around and start roaming and take over the map. And this was all in a very bad matchup. This is not a good matchup. I should not be allowed to do this. So that's the first example. The second example, I'm just going to play it through, and I want you guys to tell me what I did wrong. Yeah, this is an example of me making a bad trade. So let's take a look. So, as you can see, we lost the trade pretty hard. Now, not only did I trade into a giant minion wave, which is a big no-no, I also traded when my Caitlyn wanted to CS, so she was very clearly distracted and doing something else. She put her trap here instead of here when I binded the Vayne. On top of that, there is an even bigger issue why I should never take a trade here. Now, if I quickly go back, you'll see that I'm actually walking from base and I put a ward down in river. Now this is me coming out of base. So the simple answer to why this is a terrible idea to trade at this point is, even if I won the trade, even if we managed to make the perfect situation and I take only a few auto attacks from Vayne, they are going to base. They're going to come back out of base and I need to deal with this gigantic minion wave under my tower. So I won't even technically win the trade because they will have healed, bought items, and I will still have to pop a health potion or stay in lane. So in this situation, I want everybody to realize why trading would first of all be a bad idea. And then second of all, if I just play it out again, the trade actually was avoidable. I could have hit this auto attack, hit this Q, and just backed off. But you know, I'm smurfing in this game and I got a little greedy. I got a little cocky thinking they wouldn't punish me, and I get punished pretty hard for this. So kudos to enemy bot lane, but this was a lose-lose trade, and I wanted to throw this example in as one of those situations where, you know, even challenger players can make really bad decisions. And this was just, it was never going to turn out well for me, even if I played it perfectly. While I was looking for examples, I found this one, and I'm going to throw this in as the third example real quick of the exact same situation that the last example portrayed, but the reverse. So Vayne is the one who is making the same mistake I am making. There's a gigantic wave. She needs to catch it under tower. If me and Caitlyn lose the trade, then we're fine. But she walks up into the wave trying to contest us, and she basically just nearly dies. Now, even if she played it perfectly, I want to stress it's the same problem. We could have just based. So you have to be really, really careful about minion waves when you trade. They basically they are a sixth man on your team, minion waves. You have to think of the wave, if it's big enough, as an extra player in your lane. And pretty much me and Vayne in both of these examples did not think of the minion waves properly in that way, and we got punished for it. This is my final example for you all, and this is the perfect example I could find from my recent solo queue games of using a distraction to win a trade. Now, I want to explain a little bit about the matchup. As you can see, I'm playing Alistar as always against Zilean Caitlyn, and I have a Kai'Sa 80 carry. So no surprises for if you guys can guess who has the longer range and better trades in this lane. It is really, really awkward trading onto a Zilean Caitlyn if they're playing in minion waves and if they're playing at their range properly. They will just simply outrange me. So a lot of the times I will go in, if they're playing on point, they will CC me either with a Caitlyn trap or Zilean slow, and I can't disengage and run away. So how do I get trades in a matchup which is very clearly unfavorable? And I'll show you how, but first I'm just going to play the clip through, and I want you to look specifically at my movement. Now I'm going to pause before I actually pull the trade off. Now, if you guys were noticing, what I'm trying to do is not let them just walk up and zone my Kai'Sa from CS. Now, they know that Graves is in bot jungle, but at the same time, they should still be able to win trades. The reason they're playing scared is because I am constantly going slightly in and out of my W range, and Caitlyn is a bit scared of getting comboed. Should they be scared of getting comboed? Probably, because if I land a good combo with Kai'Sa having a clean line of sight, like I mentioned earlier in the video, to land her W, we probably just kill them, or at least burn their summoners. But should they be playing this scared? I don't know. It's a bit debatable. But what I'm trying to do is essentially every time Caitlyn is about to CS, I'm threatening to combo her. So I'll play it out and I'll talk through the specifics. So she's having to use her Q on the wave. And as she goes for this minion right here, this little minion that's slightly low, I'll just go back and play it through. As she goes for that caster minion, I notice that she starts her auto attack wind up. She walks up and she starts basically about to auto attack. She's like right clicking on it. I can tell she's right clicking on it because she's walking directly to the creep. And I know that I have a window to go in here. And basically there's no counterplay because she has to just give up the creep. That's the correct play for Caitlyn here. And then we get a really nice clean trade. Now, Kai'Sa ends up landing a sicko mode W, which, you know, she probably shouldn't have landed, or she should have used it instantly. But from this point onwards, we are winning a lane. Again, we should not be winning. We should not have prio in this lane. But we are winning simply because I used minion waves slightly better than they did. And there's one more part about this trade that I think should be talked about, and that is this. So what Zilean just did here was a big mistake. He's using his Q kind of inefficiently, and this was actually, I believe, the second Q he used in lane, which was not very good. The first Q landed on me, and what I actually did with it, and I'd actually like to show you, this may not be super applicable in all lanes, but hopefully I can show you what I did with the first Q that Zilean lands on me here. Alright, so he lands a Q on me. Now, what am I going to do with this Q? I know for a fact that these guys outrange me, and if we are trading in front of their tower, it is very, very risky for me to walk up. So what I do is I basically just destroy my own minions with it. I walk into the wave and I damage the wave. And what this means is the wave is still going to be in the middle despite us really hard pushing the wave. It's not going to be pushing into the enemy tower really fast. And this helps me because then I can start looking for more opportunities to trade. Now, it's not perfect because if they get level 2 and they zone us, it's very hard for me to actually like prevent them from walking up. But it gives me a couple of, you know, seconds of window in between waves to look for some more aggressive trades. We're level 2 here, and the final point about this example that I want to point out is using my matchup knowledge to its maximum. Like I said, if I had Aftershock and I went in on these trades, the trade itself would be okay to start with. You know, we might get some burst off on Kate or on Zilean, but how do I actually get out? Because in the event that Zilean plays the trade properly, what he should do in theory is double bomb me on Caitlyn as soon as I combo onto Caitlyn. And then what happens is Caitlyn can put a trap down if she's not stunned, which she shouldn't be after she lands, and I will get trapped. And then after that, they can basically just keep walking into me and hitting me. Unless we one-shot Caitlyn, that is how the trade will go. So in this matchup, I know for a fact that if I land a clean combo on Kate, that was a very nice alliteration. If I land a clean combo on Kate, I need to get out pretty quickly after my combo, otherwise they'll trap me, they'll bomb me, I'll be CC'd for 75 years, and I'll die. So what I do here in this situation, as you'll see, is I proc Phase Rush, and then I get the hell out fast. Now, Zilean does misplay pretty badly. He ends up throwing bomb in some random location there, but I proc Phase Rush, I land one more auto, and I just disengage really quickly. Because Zilean had no bomb, I wasn't really at a threat, but I have to still be careful to not get traded on when I retreat. So I hope that was a useful video. I hope you learned something and you enjoyed the examples. I stream every single night between 8 to 10 depending on the day, so if you would like, hop over to my stream. I'll leave a link in the description. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you want to see any more videos, leave a comment. You can even go onto my Twitter and tell me, hey Raisins, make a video about this. I would really love to see your thoughts on it, and I will do my best. And apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and good luck in solo queue. Have a nice day.